Saw a little bit of extra footage that was shot in Las Vegas from hunterace there, as he said that Pavel's play has looked a bit shaky. And frankly, I agree. I think that most of it has boiled down to deck choice for me when I look at Pavel's games. He has shaped that up a lot recently, but then once he got onto the meta decks that people have been playing for weeks at that point and making excellent looking plays, I feel like Pavel's play has been, you know, like a solid C- to C+ range instead of the A- to A+ that we're expecting from Grandmasters.
Yeah, I think it was it week 1 where there was the interview with Casey after he played Pavel, where Casey kind of just called Pavel out and said, this is not good enough. Like, we expect better from our Grandmasters, and we all need to like work together to elevate the game. And I think Pavel reacted to that because Casey was kind of talking about Pavel's preparation. And I don't think it's an issue with Pavel not trying. I absolutely don't want to accuse him of that. I think since that first week, he has put in the necessary hours and necessary practice. And I keep hearing of this practice group that he's involved in, where he has been putting in lots and lots of hours to get to where he is. I think he is just a little step behind the game right now, and it's going to take some time for him to really get on the level of some of these players are at, because Hearthstone as a collective, the player base as in general, has progressively got better with each year. So each subsequent World Championship requires a higher level of play to win than the one that came before it. So it doesn't matter if you are a previous World Champion. If you suddenly miss out on this entire year's worth of development that's pushed Hearthstone forward, then you get in trouble. And I think that's where we find Pavel right now.
Yep, indeed. And he, you know, kind of to touch on that just a little bit more as we're looking at the deck list here, Casey said that he knows Pavel's capable of that as well.
He is, absolutely.
And I absolutely agree. So, you know, this is kind of where it starts right now in this match right here. hunterace at a very, you know, kind of teeter-tottering record here. He's at 6-4, which is quite solid. This win for him today is much more crucial than it is for Pavel, though. You know, Pavel sits at 2-8, and he's playing the spoiler role right now. How many days can he ruin in his next 4 matches?
And he does have the opportunity to potentially ruin hunterace's day, because as we see, hunterace does not main deck his Archivist Elysiana. Now, I do want to immediately caveat that Bomb Warrior mirrors only come into Elysiana territory sometimes. Sometimes you can run away with tempo on the game much too efficiently, and when Elysiana comes into play, it's not even really a matter of refilling your deck with other cards so you don't fatigue. It's just making sure your deck is full of cards that aren't bombs. That's basically where the only way it comes into play. So Pavel having the Elysiana main deck is an advantage, but it's not the be-all, end-all advantage, but it does put him in a potentially promising position. What I will say, though, is that particularly, I think, was it you and Gallon that were casting? No, it was Gallon and Lorinda who were casting Pavel piloting Bomb Warrior last week. And Gallon had a lot of choice words about the way that Pavel was playing Bomb Warrior.
Yeah, and you know, I have to agree with Gallon on that one. I've played a lot of Bomb Warrior with Gallon, and we both have had some perspectives where we're learning. You know, I've learned a bit more, I think, than Gallon has. In terms of Gallon's been teaching me stuff.
I know, yeah, I knew what you meant.
As soon as I said it, I was like, that didn't sound right, so I'm going to rephrase that.
There's like 50% of people are going to take that the wrong way.
Yeah, which is why I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Gallon got 2nd place at the Masters Tour in Las Vegas with Bomb Warrior, and he played it exceptionally. It's a lot of plays that, on their surface, look worse than what else he could have done. But when you look at it in totality and what the objective of a Bomb Warrior matchup is, your goal is to play the role of a mid-range aggro deck.
Yeah.
And you do that very well. Your minions they're not inherently threatening, but what they are is they're very threatening as the game progresses. And so with Warrior, you have a lot of natural defensive tools, and when you look at it from a top-down perspective, your opponent needs to kill all of your minions, and then you follow that up with Warpaths and Brawls. That's a situation where your opponent can get in trouble. But looking at this game right here, hunterace mulliganed away a Clockwork
Goblin
from the opening hand. I'm very interested in that.
He sure did. He kept the Wrench Caliber and he threw away a Clockwork Goblin. And like, I take your point. I am constantly amazed at how efficiently Bomb Warrior can pressure other decks, right? There's a lot of decks where you say, well, this is just one of those matchups where Bomb Warrior just has to curve out and pile on the pressure. And if you just kind of like mathematically break down the curve in Bomb Warrior, it seems to happen much more commonly than it should. And I don't know how much of that is that you can get away with having a little less pressure because you kind of have this implied pressure of like the bombs being in your deck. And sometimes pressure your opponent it's good enough to like just have Wrench Caliber on 4 and then Blastmaster Boom on 7. Like sometimes that's just enough pressure. So I am constantly baffled by how often Bomb Warrior is able to get pressure going, because it seems on the surface that their deck is less well equipped to do that than they actually are.
I mean, Wrench Caliber, if the game progresses to the final state, is 4 mana, 16 damage. That's a lot in one card.
Yep.
Takes a while for it to happen, but that's why you got Brawls and Warpaths. They just keep chipping away.
Hunterace is playing double Brawl in his primary deck, which is something that I feel has become a lot less common as the weeks have gone on of Grandmasters. Like, what do you think that is leaning towards?
I would say Mage specifically. You know, Mage has been quite popular in Grandmasters, and it's been quite good as well. So when I've played that matchup a lot, what ends up happening is when I'm curving out, I can contest what Mage is doing. A lot of times you can pressure them in a way to where they need to play a Giant early. And when they have to play a Giant early, if you've had minions, you're able to clear it. When you're not able to do that, though, when that situation doesn't arise, or you just can't pressure enough to where you're actually killing a Mage in time, the boards can get out of control. And when they get out of control, you need Brawls.
Yeah.
Plural, S.
And I think you can kind of see that as well when you move to his tertiary deck. It's one of those only 2 cards needed. One big game hunter comes in and Super Collider comes in, and that's because he's kind of already set up for Mage in his primary deck.
Yeah, your goal is to tempo them. It's not to, in total, control the game.
Yeah, oh yeah, agree. If you just try to play the game against Mage of I'm going to kill everything you play without putting pressure on you. No, they have too much stuff. You're going to die.
And a lot of that boils back down to Blastmaster Boom, where once you reach the mid-game stage, a lot of times the Mages start to make a crazy board, but you'll have enough life total that you can sustain the hit. So when you play Blastmaster Boom, and they know you have 2 Brawls in the deck, they have to look down at all the boom bots and go, do I need to trade some of these? Which gives you more life, which means the Brawl is more impactful for extending the game. There's a lot of nonsense that keeps, you know, compounding and boiling on top of itself. And that, to me, is what makes it so interesting. I think 2 Brawls should be standard in the deck, personally.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. By the way, I love that we've got into our first Warrior Mirror, and by turn 4, we're already just talking about a completely different match.
Well, it's just like an interesting mechanism, right? Again, Warrior's like a very visual deck. It's like, is the Warrior killing things? As soon as something doesn't die, that's the turn to talk about.
Maybe... No.
I think there's some merit to Town Crier and hunt for the other Militia Commander here. You do have the Wrench Caliber if that fails, if you want it. But typically the Elec needs to die here. My instinct was to attack the Elec and then play the Dynamatic.
Maybe... No.
I can see that.
That's a big difference in the deck list that we have here as well. Gallon had actually omit Augmented Elec from the list. In fact, the 2 most successful Bomb Warriors at the Masters Tour omit Augmented Elec from the list.
Right.
Pavel has chosen to omit Augmented Elec in this one, and Hunterace is not. And I think specifically in a Bomb Warrior matchup, there are trade-offs to that. You don't have the same insane early start potential, and you also lose some of the late game value on it. But at the same token, you pick up a lot of the mid game by never being vulnerable to Dynamatic ever.
Yeah. And I feel like in the Bomb Warrior Mirror as well, if you specifically don't just get your Alex early and just curve out with them, you can't really just like save up and go for a huge like Elec plus a bunch of bomb cards turn, because then you're just inviting your opponent to drop their Elysiana, right? And it ends up being nothing. It's a weird balancing act in the Bomb Warrior Mirror where there's such thing as too many bombs in your opponent's deck, because it just kind of gives them the freedom to do what they want to do, which is get rid of all of those bombs with Elysiana.
Yeah. They run a risk of, you know, getting hit real hard, but if they get to Battle Cry, take away 25 to 30 damage, they're pretty stoked about that.
So many choices.
That's an interesting drop, though, to now the dynamic of the match where Pavel's going to be under threat of so many bombs with Alex in there. But he's not really pressuring Hunterace the same way. It feels like Pavel has committed to playing a more controlling style early.
Job done.
Somewhat by virtue of the Augmented Elec.
Both of these hands just starting to dry up for each player now. Hunterace with a little more gas to keep going, but those 2 brawls are just kind of stodging up his hand right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely pretty bad in the mirror match.
It generally kills a minion in the mirror match.
Yeah.
Or you kill their Dr. Boom board and take like 15 damage in the process.
Love this play, by the way. Ship it face.
Giddy up.
The deck just deals more damage than you think it does. It really does.
I absolutely agree. I will hold my hands up and say I completely underestimated this deck for a long time. I think...
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that with the change in format to Specialist, like Control Warrior is just sideboard food, right? Like if you choose to bring Control Warrior, it's very simple to add 5 cards to your deck that beats Control Warrior. It's almost impossible to add 5 cards to your deck that beats Bomb Warrior with the same consistency. So I think that explains the shift, but I will absolutely hold my hands up and agree with your point that I dramatically underestimated how much damage this deck deals on a consistent basis.
I recall back to the interviews we gave at World Championships where, you know, the Eastern players had almost exclusively brought Bomb Warrior.
Yep.
And the Western players had almost exclusively brought Control Warrior.
Yep.
And the debates on both sides were very much in the camp of whoever made the decision they made were the ones that were right.
Isn't that funny how opinions work?
I was just like, because I remember sitting there thinking, I was like, these Bomb Warrior lists look real good. And I saw Killing All Day's Bomb Warrior list, and I was like, let's go!
Again, I stand by in Conquest. I feel like Control Warrior remained the better choice for that tournament. I don't think my opinion has changed on that front.
Let the pain spread to me.
Is that the most disappointing animation in Hearthstone? When you play a Mega Devastator and it like fully winds up, but then nothing happens?
Like a DBZ episode.
Yes, exactly.
You gotta wait till the 10th one before something happens.
Yeah. It's because they have to wait
So
for the manga
many
to like get
choices.
far enough ahead of them.
See, this is where I'm lost. I just remember watching it.
Yeah.
They would just kind of yell at each other for...
I think that's why filler episodes in anime exist, because they can't catch up with the source material. They have to let the source material keep getting further and further ahead of them.
Yeah, that's the reason.
I genuinely think it is. Citation needed, but I think that is true.
It's like season 1, 39 episodes. Huh? Maybe Game of Thrones could learn from that. Pavel's starting to pull ahead. Very much, I think that the long-term damage race, a little bit favoring hunterace still, but he's lost board, and it's not in a situation where you want to use anything, so the 1-2s and the 2-4 just become annoying in this spot. It's like the minions are so inferior, you don't want to expend your resources.
Yeah.
If hunterace is not expending resources, that plays directly into Pavel's strength in the matchup.
I wonder.
I just go back to the point earlier where you mentioned how Pavel has kind of let himself slip into a more controlling situation because of the Elic, as you put it. Well, there's also the consideration that he is the Elysiana gamer in this matchup as well. At least for game 1, like he has the long-term game plan and hunterace doesn't. And
Right.
again, I want to be very clear. When I say long-term game plan due to Elysiana, I do not mean that they're going to exhaust their deck slowly and then add 10 more cards and then draw 10 more cards. I'm saying that if it gets to a late game scenario, Pavel can just save up and throw a bunch of bombs in the deck and win the game out of nowhere. Hunterace cannot do that because Pavel has the Elysiana to fall back on. So playing controlling, playing slow, pushing to the late game, and then slowly grabbing control is a much more viable strategy for Pavel, whereas Hunterace really does have to giddy up and get going. And it looks like for now, unless a lot of bombs are in Pavel's future, Hunterace has kind of lost control of his ability to do that.
That's an interesting draw. I went from almost certainly brawl this turn to should I shield slam instead? I feel like the brawl here might still be a better cause, but at this point, you know, with the cards sitting in Hunterace's hand as long as they have, Pavel almost certainly being able to get some reads on what's happening with Hunterace's hand. And, you know, vice versa as well. But I think in Hunterace's position, it's so much more scary that you're just sitting here doing almost nothing and Pavel's turning out threats.
Right. Yeah, I think a brawl has to be used here. There's 2 minions stuck in your hand. I think shield slam there and developing nothing essentially alongside it just really doesn't get you anywhere. Pavel's just going to load up more pressure afterwards. The problem is that the Brawl leaves you in the same spot, so I think hunterace has to seriously consider like even tempo Spellbreaker in this position to not continue to fall behind.
There's something I know about hunterace. It's that Spellbreaker is almost certainly reserved for a Snip Snap.
But what happens when Pavel just doesn't stack his Snip Snap?
Don't know. I think the idea of it is Pavel, you know, in the matchup in general, you're very interested in using it as a magnetic purpose to push damage. Like, this is almost one of the primary focuses of Snip Snap in this matchup. And so he's expecting that, so Pavel should be considering separating some of them. You just think about how much worse it would have been if had he just ended up playing the Spellbreaker in that instance. And now look at how much better it is. That's massive.
I'm kind of surprised to see the double stack, though. I'm going to be honest.
I'm actually not. You know, the only thing I'm kind of surprised by is that he ended up going with the Eternium Rover and stacking another one on that, because I just wanted to slap 3 of these bad boys on this Boombot and shit face.
Wow. Against your opponent's Spellbreaker deck.
The reason I don't want to do it is because of turn 10. Like, that's why I would have landed on the 2 separate ones, is because of Omega Devastator. I would not have been thinking about Spellbreaker.
That's what I'm saying. But then even then, 3 separate ones is even better against Omega Devastator, right?
It's worse against Warpath, though.
Sure, that's fair.
What
Your magic shall not save you.
I'm pretty interested in neutralizing my opponent's cards that are
So
typically dead in the matchup and keeping them dead.
But then 3 split ones plus the Eternium Rover actually plays around Warpath as well, right?
It does. I think there's a lot of ways to go
so
for
I
it.
still feel like that's just the best combination. Yikes.
Yeah, you don't want the bombs to cycle out before you have Blastmaster Boom opportunities.
But right now, hunterace does really want those bombs dealing damage to his opponent because he is slowly losing other outs.
Yeah,
Because hunterace does not know that Pavel is just sitting here chilling on a Ziliax right now that's going to shut down that option as well.
He's got Ziliax, and then he's also got Warpath with this.
Yep.
With this little Eternium Rover, which is quickly becoming a not-so-little Eternium Rover.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that part of Pavel's play on the previous turn. Like setting the Eternium Rover down as a base.
I'll tell you what, if this Eternium Rover lives, hunterace is in heaps of trouble.
It looks like it's out here living.
So many choices.
Cash in on the other Eternium Rover as well. Just very efficient use.
Yeah. It's always curious, when you watch these Warpath turns happen, you often see like seemingly random parts of the turn just happening at random times. And it's generally, you know, because the rope hits, and then players are so used to playing under the rope pressure that they understand that they should queue other actions in between the Warpath reappearing in their turn. Especially when you have like the additional animations of armor procs going off, for example.
He's drawn Blastmaster Boom, but the problem is your opponent has 2 Eternium Rovers into play.
Yep.
Which is just like, this is one of the worst situations to have your Blastmaster Boom go off, is when your opponent has a Death Rattle that's making 1/1s, and when your opponent's gaining armor every time you touch a minion. So I think that hunterace needs to find a way to set up this Blastmaster Boom in a different situation, which, you know, again, looking at Pavel's hand, this is going to be tough to do. Every single step, I think he's presented with counterplay from Pavel's side.
What now?
So kind of drawing up that conclusion, what I end up landing on is you probably need to Blastmaster Boom. And that's not a good feeling right now.
Somebody order a bomb.
He's going to choose the setup. Shuts off some of the armor.
Unity through precision.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that is just about the best card in Pavel's deck
So
right now.
I'm thinking about the difference in the Shield Slam and the Omega Devastator, because when you have Ziliax in hand right now, do you need to add more pressure to the board in the form of a Mega Devastator? So I'm very curious about how important it is potentially to save that versus use the Shield Slam and suit up either the War Gear or the Ziliax? That is a very worthwhile question. Perhaps even just set up the War Gear and the Ziliax on the same minion. I mean, you get to shut off the lifesteal on the opposing side and just have a huge thing. There's no Spellbreaker. You are, in 33% Brawl territory after that, but there's a lot of little things to think about here.
There is. There's also, I don't think his armor's going anywhere anytime soon based on the current situation. Like, he might be expecting to take, what, 1 bomb on average over the next couple of turns?
Yeah. Kind of the way I'm looking at it is neither is 10 armor, or I'm sorry, neither is 10 mana going anywhere anytime soon. Just do you need the added pressure? And I think that with the life total on the other side, perhaps. And this also changes part of the Brawl dynamic as well.
Yeah, I think this is totally fine. I like pressuring hard this turn because hunterace, even with a dead card on the left-hand side of his hand that could very well be the second Brawl, like, Pavel has no shortage of gas in his hand, right? Like, he still has a Mechathune and a Dynamatic Ziliax to follow this up afterwards. I just don't think it's a big deal to even eat the second Brawl there and keep pushing afterwards.
So hunterace now debating on whether or not you Omega Devastator for pressure.
I wonder.
I don't necessarily think so.
I feel like hunterace needs to find himself a spot where he can play this Blastmaster Boom. And if he keeps holding on to cards like a Mega Devastator with the intention of playing them, then that's a turn he's not playing Blastmaster Boom.
So Shield Slam to prevent some of the magnetic stuff. Oh no.
Those bomb draws are just so bad for hunterace. And now, of course, the Mega Devastator pays off huge.
Save the best for last.
I'm struggling to see the window now where this Blastmaster Boom is going to have a huge impact for him.
I'm kind of seeing the Clockwork Goblin mulligan, though, like going back to the beginning of the game, because one of the benefits you can have is by playing Clockwork Goblin and Blastmaster Boom in the same turn. You can't play Wrench Caliber and Blastmaster Boom in the same turn. So I'm kind of looking at it, and I think it might be right, actually, with his particular list and in the matchups, to toss away the Clockwork Goblin, which is really weird feeling to me, because I don't think I've ever mulliganed that card. Ooh, perhaps there's something here now. Both Wrench Caliber's gone, one Augmented Elec, one Clockwork Goblin. Ooh, I don't know. I think the window just might be gone.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards agreeing with you.
This feels like if he's going to play this, he wants to consider the Warpath. You want to shut down this 6 healing so bad.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
That's alive. That's very alive.
hunterace is not happy about it, and I don't blame him.
There's something to factor into the Shield Slam debate from last turn as well, that you hadn't seen the Blastmaster Boom from your opponent, which can very quickly erode all that armor that you have built up, so maybe use the Shield Slam when you do have the availability. It's something worth throwing into the mix as well. Wow! Shield Slam, 1 path to retain 6 damage.
All right, you've now introduced an official new name for that card.
Does no one else do that? Just
I've never heard
one,
that.
1 path, 2 path, 3 path?
I've never heard that before.
Oh,
I mean,
I think that's just a super efficient way of talking about it.
maybe I'm just out of the loop now. Just not on board with what the hip kids do. 1 path, 2 path, 3
path,
4 path. That's how old I am. Is he still on that show?
I have no idea.
Take the opportunity to Twitter Google here. Someone please tweet at me and let me know if he's there not or still. And tweet Sonic too.
Hey, speak to me.
Acolyte Go in a heartbeat there.
Yeah.
No consideration for playing Elysiana just to have it in play, potentially threatening lethal in a couple of turns?
I think he feels safe with the Brawl and then also wants to draw his Blastmaster.
Sure. It's a big minion in play when your opponent has been really consistently struggling to kill big minions.
This is also a really, this is really tough. Like, I'm in another position where I'm not necessarily convinced that you play Dr. Boom first. Like, I think that was the only draw in the deck that could have made me not play Dr. Boom.
I'm okay with it.
He needs to have the damage. He has to have connections or he cannot win the game.
Although I will say, playing Dr. Boom and then playing Snip Snap afterwards is essentially the same thing.
But it takes away one attack to face, potentially.
Yes.
You need the attacks to face. You don't need to kill minions. You need to connect.
That's fair.
So the time is nigh.
No, that is an excellent point.
Let me teach you something about face damage. Snip Snap! Look at that big mechanical Murloc crab thing. Look at those claws snapping. You think he's not serious?
When did Pavel get all the way back to 26, by the way?
Ziliax.
Yeah. I mean, I know. It was a mostly rhetorical question.
I will, from here on out in this cast, treat all questions Sottle asks that are rhetorical as non, and vice versa.
Excellent. So does that mean you answered this question? He has no idea. Yes!
Oh, that wasn't rhetorical?
No, it was rhetorical. So therefore you were supposed to answer it. Those are the rules, right?
Well, that's what I asked. That wasn't rhetorical?
Okay.
I
We lost. Moving
dang
on.
it!
Somebody order a bomb.
You know, if you can't draw the Blastmaster Boom and use Elysiana, pressuring your opponent is the next best step. But I think from here, Hunter Ace can capitalize.
I really want to take a long, hard look at playing a 7-7 last time.
Well, it's in the past, but like I agree. I think he should have really considered playing it a lot more.
And I think that's my issue, right? That there was not even a thought.
Yeah, that's my issue.
It was drawn. He drew the Acolyte. He tossed the Acolyte into play before it even hit his hand.
7 more armor. 7 of it. That's like the opposite of the 10 damage thing that I always say.
Omega Assembly, probably about as good as it gets in this position.
Like, you're getting pressured back now. You got to do something.
Yep. And Bulldozer without Mad Genius.
I mean, both Mad Geniuses were buried pretty deep, but Pavel's, that Archivist Elysiana, he wants to keep that locked until he finds Blastmaster Boom. Could he have afforded to wait for that this game? We're in that find out next time territory.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he has the tempo to get there anymore.
I think seeing that there was an Omega Assembly left as well, I can definitely understand the rationale that he feels like he has enough gas to just completely neutralize this game from this point. Like, he was up at 26 health. The board was empty. His opponent had 2 cards. I can totally understand Pavel's mindset of saying, okay, I don't have to do anything. I can just wait this game out from this position.
Wow.
It just so happens that Hunter Ace has kind of found the dream scenario of ways to gas out from this position.
And for Hunter Ace here, too, he has an opportunity to isolate the board yet again, where if you take Piloted Reaper, you run that into the Clockwork Goblin, you run a Eternium over into the Bulldozer, you get to Shield Slam afterwards, and attack for 6 again. The Brawl is becoming super hard for Pavel to use.
And now Hunter Ace officially has nothing.
But I think despite having nothing, he's technically in the lead.
Well, that's a bold call, Mr. Zamora.
I'm a bold man, Mr. Welch. Remember that time I called you Simon Sottle Welch instead of Sottle Simon? Wait, no, I did it the other way. I just did it again!
So
Dang
dumb.
it!
So dumb.
You're not wrong. Okay, now that he's found a Ziliax,
All right, that's
Wait, hang on.
Yeah.
He is officially in the lead with the beryllium nullifier. Hunter Ace.
I'm sorry. Can we, out of cards, 1 in 8 Omega Assembly.
Oh my gosh.
Devastator Nullifier Boom Reaver. Is this real life? I'm calling the police. A crime has just...
Oh, the bomb gets drawn. Pavel cannot respond.
That is a huge victory for hunterace on so many levels. Firstly, because he comes into the primary versus primary in a somewhat unfavored position, so he had to dig his way out of it, and he did so. Secondly, because the game progressed to a point where he clearly looked to be in an unfavored position and had to dig his way out of it in very real terms, and did so. That Omega Assembly off the top was everything, and then not only did he find himself the long-term game plan, he found the short-term game plan of the magnetic minion to push that extra damage for a single bomb lethal out.
Wow. And it all opened up because instead of playing Dr. Boom, he played 3 snip snaps and went face.
Yes, absolutely agree with that play in retrospect and at the time as well. You know, I think there are times during Grandmasters you have suggested not playing Dr. Boom that have been frankly ridiculous, but I think I am perhaps too far in the other direction as well. I think there is maybe some merit to your world that we do have to consider, but Dr. Boom is an extremely good card in the vast majority of scenarios. hunterace just found one where it wasn't the best play out of 2 potential cards in hand. The other one was better.
Just a very weird circumstance that I somewhat agree with you about him, me being wrong, but not in total. This is our feature match that we have going underway here, and we'll talk about more feature matches that'll be happening later in Americas. We have a piece prepared with Dog. It's called Around the Fern. Take a look.
Welcome back to Around the Fern. I'm joined by David Dog Cairo. You strike me as like the popular guy in high school who had, you know, all the cheerleaders and people like did their homework for you, and you just kind of like walked into class and the teacher was like, "Hey, Doc, here's an extra credit." And you're like, "I didn't do anything." And they're like, "Yeah."
High school.
And then the guidance counselor was like, "You're going to college." And you're like, "Nah, I'm going to play Hearthstone." High school sucked. Well, for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Why did you, why dog?
You know, some people name it after their favorite animal. I named it after my favorite food. So.
Do you know what the most popular name for a dog is?
What is that?
Max. You know how many teeth an average adult dog has?
No, I don't.
Do you know how many teeth an average male has? Two. Didn't you go to medical school?
No, I did not go to medical school.
So you lied?
No,
You don't know a lot about dogs, do you?
I do not.
Is there an animal that you do know a lot about? Or a creature of some sort? Or medical dramas on TV?
No, I don't know much
What would
about
you say your
animals.
spirit animal is?
A dog.
Yeah, sorry, this fell too. Okay. Does your mom or dad talk to you about Hearthstone?
I remember one time I lost a tournament, and everyone in my chat was giving me crap about it, right? And she said, "Why do they have to kick a dog when he's down?"
Can you teach me how to be relaxed and chill?
I can't teach you. I'm sorry.
Can you show me?
That was it.
That lovely piece was brought to you by Frodan and Dog. Dog, the feature match in Americas later on, he'll be facing off against Purple, coming off his Grandmasters Tour win. I'm sorry, Masters Tour win, not Grandmasters Tour win. He is a Grandmasters who won the Masters Tour.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
So it is a Grandmasters Tour.
I just want to say about that interview that when Dan came out and told me what had gone down, I knew very firmly that it was either going to be the worst thing I ever watched or the best thing I ever watched, and I am so happy that it is very firmly in the latter camp.
You missed one there. Very firmly in the camp.
I can't believe I missed
Yeah,
that.
it's too.
That was such low-hanging fruit.
It was too obvious for you. It's like the situations for me where I don't play Dr. Boom. It's so obvious to me that it's right that sometimes I overlook it.
So speaking of Dr. Boom, back to the Warrior Mirror at hand. Both of these players do, of course, have the full suite of Dr. Booms available, but then things start to differ enormously. And I mentioned various reasons why that was a huge win for hunterace. Missing one out as to why it was potentially hugely detrimental to Pavel, because Pavel does not have as much gas packed into his secondary and tertiary decks as hunterace does for this scenario. You see, this is hunterace's secondary deck now. Brings in his Elysiana, also brings in a Geppetto and a Cairn, alongside a second copy of Omega Assembly and a Harrison Jones. Pavel, on the other hand, his secondary deck is the Iron Beak Owl Spellbreaker EMP operative package, looking to target mechs. And then his tertiary deck is just packing in some big game hunters and some brawls and some super colliders.
Oh, I was just looking at his secondary and tertiary removes Archivist Elysiana. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You would love to have a plan, but you can't take that card out.
You do not. Pavel does not have a package that is really engineered for the Warrior Mirror. His Warrior Mirror deck really is his primary deck, which makes him losing that initial game against hunterace's non-Warrior targeted deck a huge deal, because now hunterace just piles in so much extra gas into his deck with Cairn, Bloodhoof, Geppetto, Joybuzz, and of course now matching Elysiana with his opponent as well.
And I want to talk about that a little bit deeper because it has some pretty major implications on the gameplay, where Pavel is now in this game incentivized to be more aggressive. At the same time, hunterace is clearly getting more aggressive if he wants to with his game plan, but it's supplemented with big endgame stuff. You know, the big endgame stuff for Pavel, he's drawn it in hand. It's the Blastmaster Boom, it's Dr. Boom Mad Genius. So him having those firmly lets him continue that aggressive game plan. But when you're talking, you have to have an aggressive game plan where everything matches up evenly, but your opponent has more top end. If you both have equal draws, that goes to the more top end.
Yep, it sure does.
Heck, I think even if hunterace's draw is a little bit worse than Pavel's is, it probably goes to the top end.
No consideration that this Omega Assembly was ever getting ripped, either on turn 1 there or with the floating mana on turn 2?
Don't think so. I think his hand is strong enough with Acolyte and Shield Block, Shield Slam that he's free to take it slow. Find the right turn.
Okay.
Ooh, now that's an interesting card.
Can we just go back to the Omega Assembly quickly, because there's a part of my brain that's telling me, because hunterace has so much extra gas anyway, in general, in the deck, that his goal is just to not fall behind on mid-game tempo, and just getting one mech to play on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 might help him not do that.
Yeah, I think if he didn't have, like, Acolyte of Pain, Shield Block, Shield Slam, I'm trying to think, like, if he had, like, a Brawl and a Warpath in its place,
okay,
I think it's likely. I think with you know, just important tools that you could use on turn 3 and turn 4, nah.
Sure.
Think back to the Orange interview where he said, oh, if my hand was 2 back steps, I'd probably just take the risk and go face.
Yeah.
If your hand's bad, you probably rip the Omega Assembly. That Snip Snap has thrown all of this for a loop, though. We saw how important it was for it to just be a big endgame tool. You just added a lot more big endgame tools. Is it more important to draw cards, or is it more important to secure board and deal damage? hunterace says draw cards. What do you think about the poke there?
I was just thinking about that, because it does, of course, give Pavel the opportunity to remove his one attack minion from play if he didn't have an answer to this Acolyte of Pain. But I think with a rush minion drawn and Wrench Caliber being a potential as well, Coin Militia Commander and Coin Wrench Caliber are both pretty strong punishes to this Acolyte of Pain, and in both of those scenarios, putting the nudge into the Town Crier is better. Pavel, however, says, well, okay, if you're going to leave me the position where I can trade off my 1-attack minion,
I'll save coin.
I don't have to react to the Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah, I'll save my coin.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
Maybe I get to go 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 7 on my curve.
That is my favorite curve.
Well, he skips the 2. There's a blank in the 2 spot. I skipped the 2 because it sounded like I said
Yeah,
coin
but
3.
what do you play there?
You know,
The other 2 1-drops in your deck.
it's a Keliseth deck, look, all right? I mean,
Oh, dude. Would One Warrior actually play Keliseth?
well, probably not. You have Warpath, but,
Yeah.
you know, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
With how often I draw 2 Warpaths in my opening hand, I'd probably just play Keliseth.
I must choose.
It's just a really interesting dynamic the last couple of turns.
What? Why now?
That pain.
Well, now I'm just confused. And if we're going to get an Explodinator and then use the Snip Snap, I'm just super confused.
I like this. I like, in general, from a top-down perspective, the Omega Assembly being cast for 1 minion. I feel like that is correct in just the macro perception of where the 2 decks are lining up against each other.
Okay, I'm very confused by it because my thoughts on that are, what's it doing right now? Like, do you just really want to save an Omega Devastator that bad?
I agree with you that the specific position it was played in is bizarre to me, but I like the concept of playing it for 1 minion based on the way the 2 decks line up.
Yeah, I don't mind that concept. I mean, when I don't have anything to do, I cast it. I had stuff to do.
Yeah.
It's easy to run out of stuff, which is why I like saving it. But here we are. So the Omega Assembly then used specifically, I'm sorry, the Snipsat then used to defend the Acolyte in that position. Force your opponent to have another answer. Second Omega Assembly drawn also would have probably prompted me to use the first one. So I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think it was bad.
I don't think drawing the second one really changes whether or not you play the first one. Like, the game is, you know, again, I do want to continue to be very careful that this is not a Control Warrior mirror. It doesn't always go all the way to 30 cards versus 30 cards. But the likelihood of you finding your second Omega Assembly somewhere in the course of the game is very, very high. And so I don't think the draw of the second Omega Assembly really influences my decision-making. Tell you what does influence my decision-making, though.
Big things.
Sure.
Specifically, big boards with big damage and big Blastmaster booms.
Yep. You can see the cost, though. There were 3 bombs shuffled into hunterace's deck, but the draw of one of them was actually a pretty relevant punish.
I'd say very relevant.
Yep.
Hunterace hanging on to the Augmented Relic last turn.
Yeah, that's right. Shield slam the boom bar.
I think holding on to the Augmented Relic is wise, too. You just don't want to be vulnerable like Dynomatic and nonsense like that.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things you do have to look out for in Bomb Warrior mirrors is don't create situations where your opponent's bad cards are good, and the bad cards can range from, you know, Brawl to Dynomatic to Warpath in some spots as well, and it's another kind of question mark over that Explodinator pick that you were talking about as well, is that it is a card that your opponent's very happy to use Warpath against.
Oh!
Well,
The Militia Commander just died!
That looks perfectly normal to me.
It's not an Azure Drake. I mean, maybe it's just 4 health that is vulnerable to Boombots.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
And that's the last turn that Hunterace wanted to see, was coin Blastmaster Boom into Dr. Boom and have board on Pavel's side. Hunterace is in trouble this game.
Yeah, I wonder how much of a read Hunterace could have had on that situation. Not like there was nothing he could really do to engineer a better position against this. But if you rewind back to that kind of Acolyte position that we both found pretty interesting, you played an Acolyte and your opponent showed you from that point onwards. He has then played a Wrench Caliber and he has also played a Militia Commander. So he had 2 really strong options available to deal with your Acolyte
Both
pain
kept an opening hand
on that turn. And instead of doing that, he held on to his coin, which to me kind of suggests that he wants to coin a 7.
Yeah, I'm just not sure there's anything he could have done about
There
it.
is that information would be entirely irrelevant, but I think it's interesting.
In fact, looking back, that's probably something that may have prompted the Omega Assembly is, I need something stronger to do.
Maybe.
I need to build a board
Yeah,
strong
maybe.
enough that I can influence my opponent to perhaps not make these powerful plays.
That is very possible.
It takes a long time, I think, to find the hand reading when it's reaching the level that some of the players are reading at. Take long enough, we get there, though. And I think that, honestly, is probably one of the spots. He saw Pavel keep those 2 cards. He saw him forego the coin on 4, or the coin 4 on 3.
Yeah.
That tells me the hand's super strong.
What is this 3-4 doing on the board right now?
I think it's trying to just do anything, is what I think.
It's trying to, at best, eat a Divine Shield?
I think that's relevant right now. I think it's maybe trying to slow Pavel down, like get him to play a Dynamatic instead of playing something that matters.
I feel like that Dynamatic mattered quite a lot.
I think it did too, but I think if you're in Hunter Ace's spot and you're looking at it, you're going, gosh, if they do something stronger than this, I might just die.
Yeah.
You got 2 Omega Devastators, you drew a Geppetto, you now have a Ziliax. Like, I think this is fine.
Okay.
Hand space as well for Omega Assembly and for Geppetto.
That's a good point. I'll get on board with that one.
If I list all the auxiliary reasons, Sottle will eventually agree with one.
I mean, that's a real thing, right? Like, a weight of cumulative not very good reasons becomes one very good reason. That is actually a thing.
It's like a taxing method.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so now some real pickups for Hunter Ace's side. I mean, that's a lot of mana you get from this little Galvanizer.
Hunter Ace's Omega Assemblies have been some heat this series. Hecklebot, Devastator, Galvanizer this time. And then, what was it? Devastator, Beryllium Nullifier, Boom Reaver that ended out the last game?
Yeah, just the Beryllium Nullifier, really.
Right, but you know, in the, whatever it was, the 3 out of 4 that the bomb wasn't drawn, the other 2 cards then also became extremely good.
Very nice turn here for Hunter Ace as well. Pavel strikes back against this super efficiently, though. And you see Hunter Ace, every single time Pavel has something good to do, he's shaking his head. He knows it's getting worse and worse.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
I was curious about the suit up, but we're at that stage where Hunter Ace is just going to have either nothing in hand and can't deal with stuff, so the suit up doesn't matter, or he's going to have tons in hand, and you're going to lose tempo by suiting up. I feel like if he kills this Omega Devastator with that Boombot, he much more considers the Beryllium Nullifier.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think now the hero power just becomes too juicy, though, to go for it.
Yeah, just load a second minion on side.
Dump's hand makes room for second Omega Assembly.
Yeah, the order's a little bit dirty here, but honestly, like, what are you going to get that changes that? You spent all your mana. You dealt as much damage as you could.
Yep.
You killed all the things. Wow, is Blastmaster just actually a bad draw here?
What now?
Because you want to get it from your Geppetto?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's also kind of a bad draw here because you can't
Yeah, I mean-
really afford to spend, I guess, with the
saw-
Omega, 3-mana Omega Devastator. Yeah, okay, I didn't factor into the Omega
I mean,
down
he
to 3.
He doesn't even have bombs on the other side, does he?
No.
I must choose.
Defend the gates!
It's a decent swing turn for Hunter Ace, though. It's the first time in a couple of turns that he feels like you know, he's in decent control of the board because he's finally been able to deal with that buffed up Boombot that's been terrorizing him for the last few turns. But Pavel just has so much more gas to keep going from here.
Yeah, it's just that, you know, Pavel doesn't necessarily need initiative to make headway. If he has anything on board, he can fight the board and then chip away.
Yep. All right, step one. Pavel seems to have learned his lesson. Gain the 7. That was the first thing he did.
You're talking about last week?
Yes.
Job's done.
It was a 4 hero power C4 win?
It was 3 or 4, yeah.
It was a lot of armor.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Hunterace was expecting these Omega Assemblies to be able to pull him back. I'm sorry, the Omega Devastators to pull him back. And just Pavel's checked him at every single step.
Is that a scoop?
Oh my gosh, those are like the 2 back-to-back worst draws.
I was just waiting to see like that just the body motion from Hunterace kind of almost looked like he'd escaped conceded and just sort of leant back in his chair waiting for the next game. But no, he is just taking a moment. You can see how frustrated he is with the scenario, though. This is kind of what it feels like. It does feel like a very unfair situation. It's been a criticism of, you know, Death Knight style cards, hero cards. There's the phrase I'm looking for. Since they really first came into play, that they are so polarizing when it comes to like draw RNG in the game, right? Like the one card just has such a power spike over every other draw in your deck. And that's the feeling that Hunterace is faced with right now.
Oh, I was just about to say, finally he gets a minion that has to be attacked into to killed, and it's the Zeliax one, the perfect one. But instead, an Omega Devastator shows up.
Save the best for last.
I feel for Hunterace in this one, but sometimes you just get got.
Yep.
I think in this position to win, he needs a miracle.
And this is a pattern that's just kept recurring in my brain, like watching as much of Grandmasters as I have leading up to this point, is that sometimes it just feels like players are over-teching potential, you know, secondary and tertiary decks, right? Like, there is such thing as having too clunky a hand. And I'm not for a second suggesting that any one factor is more relevant to this game than the fact that Pavel has had 5 or 6 turns of Dr. Boom and Hunterace has had 0. But like how clunky Hunterace's hand has been since he's just started drawing 8s, 7s, and 9s every turn. Like you don't necessarily need all of those cards in your deck.
I think so much of it boils down to just the timing of the draws and how if this Blastmaster Boom and Elysiana were just any useful cards, the game could have been different. Instead, he drew the 2 tech choices. These are tech choices Blastmaster Boom's not a tech choice, it's core of the deck. The Elysiana is something that...
Oh, I teched in a Blastmaster Boom to my Bomb Warrior. That's a spicy piece of tech.
It's fairly core, but at the end of the day, it is, even if nominally, a Blastmaster Boom is a situational card.
Yeah.
I think if Hunterace had Dr. Boom, he'd be fighting in this game, but I don't necessarily think it'd be any different. You know, he's drawn 0 of his bomb activators. Like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna play a War Golem? That's not gonna work. I think Pavel's draw just far outclassed Hunterace in this one, and he's capitalized in about the maximum way you can.
Yeah, I completely agree. That thing is dead.
Job's done.
So is Hunterace. Game 3. Pavel strikes back.
Yeah, returns the favor. Like I said, Pavel ended up sticking on his primary, whereas Hunterace, on paper at least, has the big advantage in deck lists with the amount of extra greed that he has piled in there. But kind of reversal of fortunes on both fronts. Hunterace came in unfavored in game 1, took it down. Pavel came in unfavored in game 2 and squared up the series.
And I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, this is definitely one of the situations just didn't line up game. You know, you had pretty weak early game. Your Acolyte got checked efficiently. You had no counterplay to your important stuff, so like Harrison couldn't hit a weapon because you never drew it. You couldn't activate Blastmaster Boom because your bombs, you didn't draw them. You can't rush your minions into theirs because your Dr. Boom, you didn't draw it. Like, if you look at all the cards collectively he didn't draw, that was the impact. It was the draw RNG that mattered this game.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of it was just like the core 20 cards of the deck, right? That are going to be in every version of the of the deck that you build. Like, he just didn't draw a significant portion of those cards, so it's really hard to look at any way you would build the deck to play around that, because you're going to end up drawing the more situational cards, because generally the cards that you sub in the secondary and tertiary decks do end up being more situational, because kind of by definition you are engineering them towards a specific situation where you get to choose to play that deck. So if you just draw all of those cards and less of the core cards in the deck, that's just going to be the scenario that you end up in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, when Purple won his matchup versus Nalguidan a couple weeks ago in Grandmasters, on the America side, in the interview, he was talking about not keeping Dr. Boom in your opening hand because he thought the tempo and the generation from that is more important.
Mad Genius, you're referring to.
Yes, Mad Genius. And that was a sort of Gallon, me and him had sat down and were playing Bomb Warrior mirror matches, and that was something we somewhat arrived on via tempo. You know, all three of us were playing tempo in a very different way, and we kind of collectively settled on one result where it's like, wow, chipping away at your opponent's life total and keeping control of the board really matters, because Brawl and Warpath are just so typically ineffective in the matchup that they don't get the job done. And so when you look at it from that perspective, what it ends up turning into is that Wrench Caliber super magnifies the importance of the matchup. It might actually be the most important card.
Okay, that's interesting. I definitely still feel that Dr. Boom Mad Genius is one of the best cards in the matchup. I think that Blastmaster Boom is above it. I would go as far as to say that. I'm not sure if I'm on board with throwing it away just yet. But Purple is a very, very smart player. And I believe in that series you're talking about against Nalguidan, he actually defeated Dr. Boom draws with non-Dr. Boom draws of his own, right? Just by tempoing out and being aggressive.
It was tempo that won. Like,
yeah.
Once you got to that stage of the game, you looked at it and you're like, what card does matter here? Like, he just dealt so much damage by virtue of tempo.
Right. Again, just going back from a deck building perspective, I wonder whether hunterace's plan, his anti-warrior plan of, you know, Geppetto, Joybuzz, that kind of route, whether that is more or less effective than the Vancouver Warrior strategy, right? Of just piling in more magnetic minions and just keeping up pressure and tempo.
The before and after of this turn from Hunterace was so much different, where he was going into the second Town Crier shaking his head no, and then he drew Dr. Boom and started shaking his head yes. But just the Town Criers making your opponent shake their head no, that is an indicator of how important early tempo is.
Yeah.
I used to not keep Town Criers and Eternium Rovers in the matchup because I didn't want to be vulnerable to my opponent's Clockwork Goblins when they came down. They could just kill my minion. And then what I started realizing is when my opponent was killing minions with Clockwork Goblin instead of me, I was very happy with it. Because you also get to chip away at that life total.
That sounds right.
Dink, dink, dink. One piece at a time.
Is that the noise 1 damage makes?
Well, when it hits an armor.
As opposed to the big noise.
The big crashing 8 damage noise, and the game lets you know you did a good thing. Now do you understand why I'm so upset when people miss 8 damage? not in total, in one
It also
minion.
makes a really big noise when you trade 8 damage, though. That's kind of the flaw in that argument.
Well, I mean, it's a big noise on a little total, though.
Okay.
See, listen.
Oh, I was listening for the 1 damage sound? Right.
Yeah, when the armor falls off.
I'm
Dink.
Yeah. Hunterace, I imagine, considering whether or not this Omega Assembly gets played again here, and chooses instead just to drop the Yeti.
The biggest thing. Dynamatic in hand.
Yeah, exactly. I like this for that exact reason. It plays his curve the best.
Wow, shield block drawn.
It means
so
that if there was a tempo minion coming down from Pavel, Hunterace can use that extra ability from the 4-5 in play to make his Dynamatic stronger. I feel like this is about as good as a Dynamatic is ever going to get in this matchup. Best outcome for Pavel?
Hunterace is noticeably lamenting outcomes more than usual to me. Like, even in the most nominal of things.
I think this is fairly standard.
Yeah, it's 33% chance
No, I
for
mean, I
this specific
think
one to
I
live.
think hunterace like reacting to random elements in the game is fairly standard. I think he does it a lot.
I feel like as
Maybe
the game went last game, though, it's become more apparent and more animated. Like, this is such an almost irrelevant outcome from this situation.
I think it's fine. You know, I think most players do start to feel frustrated when even, as you said, largely irrelevant things go against them. Just some players choose to let that show and some players don't, and I think it's largely much of a muchness whether you do or not. I really think it doesn't matter, like, whether you choose to let your frustrations show. Like, showing frustrations is not tilt.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, your frustrations affecting you is tilt. And I think for a lot of people, just venting and making some unhappy faces and throwing your arms in the air helps you to not tilt.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like you just get all of that stuff out of your body and you can focus again.
That's exactly how I feel. Like, it takes the heat off my chest.
Yeah.
It's when I try to remain stoic, that's when I crumble.
Right.
And that's why I like to talk with my friends about it.
Oh, and he will. Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora, will tell you at length about how he is the unluckiest Hearthstone player in the world.
Well, about anything, really.
That's also true. Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora, will talk to you at length.
About anything.
Full stop.
It's just super accurate. So I'm looking at these Blastmasters in hand, and I'm looking at how different this game would have been if Wrench Calibers are drawn on either side at this point.
Oh yeah, Wrench Caliber is insane.
Did he trade the minion? Why did he do that?
Well, now it's dead.
Well, sure, but you also, your opponent has more life.
Yeah. And so we reach the inherent ridiculousness.
Like
of
your
that
minion, your minion is also dead in this situation.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like the trade. That was a 2-2. Ah, sure, hit it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
So now looking back, that minion being a 2-1 instead of a 1-1 might have caused Pavel to make a mistake and trade there.
Yeah, I'm struggling to justify a trade there in any kind of relevant world.
So many choices.
I want to see the War Golem so very badly.
Yeah, hunterace now starting to look a little bit happier. Just gave the nod of the head like, yeah, that's right. You armor pass. It's my turn now.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to armor pass. I was just willing to make the sacrifice at this point. But like, oh, no boombots, I guess.
Yeah.
That's probably bad. Oh, boy.
Well, now we appear to have a plan. Consideration from hunterace maybe that his Pavel quite clearly signaled a dead hand on the previous turn. So playing a Wrench Caliber and getting that Wrench Caliber potentially Harrison Jones'd is an issue for him.
I think also just the annoyance of developing the board lightly.
Job done.
Makes a lot of sense if your opponent's got a dead hand. That hand is no longer dead.
Nope.
I think hunterace may have found the tools in this game to start generating a pretty massive lead.
Defend the gates!
The boom value has yet to come to fruition. I think it'll take a little bit longer than usual. He's just got all the tools.
And one tool in particular, namely a wrench. And that is really just activating his entire hand right now. He just has a very simple plan. Get 2 bombs in the deck, get Blastmaster Boom down for huge tempo. In the meantime, he'll find some mechs to discover. He can rip an Omega Assembly. He'll have follow that up to that afterwards. He's just in a good spot.
So for Pavel, how do you get out of that spot the best? I think it has to start with Wrench Caliber. It's just, you're left with 5 mana afterwards. It's just such an awkward
Really ugly
turn.
number with his hand, yeah.
Maybe
He needs to spend cards here as well
Yeah.
because he needs to find room to a Mega Assembly in the coming turns as well.
And if the turn's that awkward, that just means snip snaps.
Snip Snap is often a good solution to awkward turns. The only problem I have with this is it only spends 1 card, which might slow him down in the coming turn.
Golly, he's just got everything.
Sorry, I thought I was casting with Frodan there for a second.
Well, I gotta pop my P's a little bit more for that to be the case.
For a master plan.
Frodan is the only man I've ever heard pop an H on podcast.
Hunterace just gonna take it slow.
All right, that got me. Yeah, I need a moment. Let me just compose myself. It'll be good.
That boombot focus. He wants to take as much of this face as possible. I think the 2-2 is probably trading. Not exactly sure though.
I'm pretty sure it hits a 1-1, right?
Not if it hits last.
Nope.
2 to face.
Okay. So 2 less damage now versus 1 health on a 2-2 versus having an extra boombot in play.
All right, so Pavel does have
Pick
recovery here at least though. So it's the Brawl, Wrench Caliber, and then you have the 1-3 to back that up. So then you're going to get hit by a Harrison Jones.
You were saying?
Okay, well he no longer has the follow-up to this.
Would you like to reevaluate, Nathan? Which, by the way, makes Hunterace's, the way he played that last turn, incredibly smart, because 1 less boombot in play means increased percentage that the 7-7 wins the brawl, which is a very likely response from your opponent's hand, which he has shown you is full of dead cards that you hadn't been able to use,
Stuff
therefore
like
very
brawl.
likely a brawl.
Yeah. You just have to dump your hand and hope you find answers now. You're gonna take damage. You gotta figure it out afterwards.
I think that was the first real smile that we see come out from Casper in the top left. He says, "Oh, I get to keep a 7-7 this turn? Ooh, that was unexpected." Rip it. Hunterace is ridiculously good at a Mega Assembly.
Whoa. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. He just gets more. Even the draw was like the best draw in the deck.
Room to rip the second one, if he would like.
And so think back to game number 2. I don't think it was Pavel's good draw that beat Hunterace. I think it was Hunterace's bad draw that beat Hunterace.
I think it was both. I think it was a fairly even combination of both of those things.
It made it a blowout, like a total blowout.
A bad draw from Pavel would have afforded Hunterace more time to turn his own bad draw into a good draw, just by, having time to play that Geppetto, fishing out some minions, getting his advantage that way. But Pavel just had 7 into 7, and that didn't give Hunterace any time to recover from what a bad hand that he had.
And in this game too, the Blastmaster pressure. I feel like Pavel drawing his Wrench Calibers just afterwards opened his game up to being so much slower in this situation that Hunterace being able to leverage that tempo, getting fortunate on the Brawl to have the 7-7 live, it might have blown Pavel completely out of this game. I do not see him picking up a W from here. A lot of things need to go right. This is when you forego 7 armor. He's just looking for something better.
I mean, you can do some pretty powerful things with 8 mana this turn.
Bigger. better. Boom, Reaver.
Everything about Pavel's hand has just been super awkward for the last couple of turns. You see, like, I talked about this a couple of turns ago, only really now just finally being able to rip these Omega Assemblies for full value with his hand size. Yeah, that's not a Hunter Ace level Omega Assembly.
It's got a Ziliax. I mean, what would have been in this situation? Like, you needed exactly Omega Devastator Ziliax here?
Yeah.
Choices.
Well, that's not going to happen. That's super rare.
Casper would have got it.
I don't know. I mean, his other one was just big stuff. Like, big stuff is good, except for when you're behind. Like, when you're ahead, Omega Assemblies always look good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Unfortunate sequencing, let's say. Nothing incorrect about it, just very sad that you had to play your Galvanizer to make room for the second Omega Assembly, which puts 3 more mechs in your hand.
No magnetics in hand?
Nope.
I guess I'll settle for connecting for 7 damage.
That seems reasonable.
That depends on whose spot you're in. You even have backup to that with the mechanical whelp to protect yourself from a brawl scenario.
Okay, then.
Tempo good.
You're good though, because Pavel only has 1 brawl in his deck. He's already played it, so you know
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not an option anymore.
That's true.
You just don't even have to worry about it. Like, you could play the mechanical whelp and just bump it into something at some point just to get a 7/7 into play. Obviously, it was bad this turn because it would be huge healing to the opponent, but
I love that juice thing.
Hunter Ace just has all the freedom in the world, essentially, is what we're saying here. And that might just be too little too late. As Dr. Boom Mad Genius sneaks his way into the right-hand side of Pavel's hand.
17 armor technically keeps you alive. I'm sorry, 14 armor technically keeps you.
17 armor? Sign me up.
It's just not going to be enough. He has no way to fight back the position.
Nope. Dead.
Technically alive?
Shield block?
Job's done.
Technically?
Yeah,
Just not actually.
you're not wrong.
It's the embarrassment of riches scatters across Hunter Ace's side.
Nine cards at hand currently, so if he plays Geppetto, he will have to play one
This
of the
would be a
resulting
good time for a
1-mana
master
minions that he
plan.
draws to not overdraw. Extremely small concerns at this point. I don't think overdrawing is even particularly relevant.
If there's one thing I know about Hunter Ace, it's that everything is an extremely important consideration.
That's fair.
This would be
But I
a
think
good
this is the
time
play.
for a
Weirdly,
master
in a hand
plan.
with this many cards in it, like just playing one big 8-mana 6/6 is kind of close to the maximum pressure that you have this turn.
Those are the hardest cards to use. If something went wrong, you have utility to recover.
Right. Yeah, that works. Yeah, sign me up. 1-mana can. That seems right.
Oh, it's like that Tavern Brawl.
Right in the middle. Rover and
There is one technical out here for Pavel. It is an absolute unbelievable miracle. It's Blastmaster Boom and Warpath. All the bombs go face,
Okay,
you deal
then.
almost maximum damage, and Hunter Ace draws the bombs. That's it. So you can chip away at the board, perhaps.
Doesn't he only have 2 bombs though?
Yeah, I mean, oh, do you only have 2 in there? No, he's got 3 from, oh, Hunterace drew 1, didn't he? Yeah, that doesn't work then.
So even then, that's 26 damage at maximum.
Yeah.
All 4 booms, all 4 bots go face for 4. 16 draws back-to-back bombs.
Yeah.
It's just still not an out.
Oh my god. Well, no, he did.
Oh no, it does have 3. Okay, my bad.
Sato lied to me.
Well, you're not really a Grandmasters caster until you get the bomb count roll, right? Like, surely that's just an initiation at this point.
This was a valiant effort, but it wasn't there. Hunterace, 2-1 over Pavel. Dominant in game number 3, squeaks out game number 1. He gets crushed in game number 2, and then in game number 3, he's the one with everything at the end.
Everything is right. He had every option available to him at seemingly all times, just with the luxury of even throwing out earlier mega assemblies if he wanted to. He chose to divert away from that path and got paid out huge by waiting and playing the long game. And then even then, you saw how much gas his deck still had remaining to keep going after that point where he just slams Geppetto and picks up a 1-mana Can Bloodhoof to go along with it. So it's just a very, very greedy deck. And if Pavel doesn't get ahead early, he really struggles to compete in the later stages.
And something that I just really look at with that is just the importance of the bomb pressure that's there. And so much of it boils down to the Blastmaster Boom being an impactful card in that situation. But nothing was really happening until a bomb card showed up on Hunterace's side. And him having the first one meant that Pavel had to respond to it instead of taking the lead with it. And so his Blastmaster Boom was just neutralized the whole game because Hunterace got to take the lead.
Yep. Well, I can't wait to talk to Hunterace. Let's go ahead and do that right now. I believe he is standing by. Casper, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. How's it going?
It's going fantastic. First question, how does it feel being back in the comfort of your own home playing your Hearthstone games instead of like scrambling to play them at the studio or whatever you had to do last week?
Feels pretty good. I was pretty happy playing at the studio. I went 2-0 that week, and that was the first week I went 2-0, so it was pretty good. But it's definitely way more comfortable just playing from here and having this my main focus. Feel a lot more prepared for this one than for the last one.
So talk to me about that preparation specifically. You brought Bomb Warrior this week, and I'm looking at a pretty greedy secondary option for the deck that's in here. But you also didn't land on Elysiana in the main deck. You landed on a Spellbreaker instead, and you also included the Alex, which some people have been omitting. I know you can always talk at length about this, so lay it on me.
Yeah, I don't think that Elysiana is worth in main deck ever, unless you 100% expect your opponent to go Warrior, because you lose so much percentages in every other matchup because it's very unplayable. And against the Warrior, it's not even the biggest factor, I would say. All of the games we played right now was just Elysiana just wasn't a factor at all. And to be honest, most of the games go like that because one of the players end up getting ahead. That didn't actually happen in one of these games though, but like we had the outcome where both draw pretty bad, and we had the outcome where one of us draws bad twice. So in both of those outcomes, a lot of the time it just doesn't end up with Elysiana. It's just weird. Sometimes you can play the Elysiana to destroy a lot of bomb cards. But the decks in general, at least in secondary, just have so much greed. So it just becomes whoever gets the board in the end, I feel, more than whoever gets the additional value. It's more about destroying the bombs, I think.
So is it worth including Elysiana then, on that note?
Yeah, I think it's worth in the secondary list. I don't think it's worth in the. I don't think it's an extremely good card. I don't think it's an extremely good card, but it makes the cut exactly in the secondary, in my opinion.
So just watching you play throughout the series, Admirable made the comment that it felt like it was the most emotional that we've seen you during Grandmasters, like you were reacting quite heavily to a lot of outcomes.
To be honest, I don't really enjoy playing it too much. I think that the 2 last games had pretty dumb outcomes where like one of us draws both the booms and the other one doesn't draw any booms, which always feels a bit sad to play. But the first game was pretty good, I think. It was a lot of interesting decisions there that I felt mattered a lot. I was like pretty happy about my turn 4 that game. I think that mattered a lot when I went the Elec hit face. I think that like the Elec Eternium Rover hit face. I think that ended up making a pretty awkward turn for him where he has to Dynamatic his own board together with the Elec. And also I felt that in the game it was pretty close, and I managed to push a lot of damage face, which ended up mattering a lot towards the end because I was never winning the late game. So I had to end up closing it. I feel that in the early game, I managed to push enough face in positions where it was pretty tempting to trade also. That at the end of the day, I believe I had the exact lethal there, but I also had a big minion on board. I could have just kept on going.
Just quickly, while you're talking about specific turns, the turn, I believe in game 2, where you played Omega Assembly on turn 4 and picked the Explodinator, can you just talk us through what was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, that was very close. I was thinking a lot about how to play my Snip Snap because it's such a good card, and I really want it for the later game. But at the same time, there I didn't feel that if I didn't play the Snip Snap, I had enough tempo. And towards the end, I decided to play the Snip Snap. And what was the thing I was looking for was I was looking for something to magnetize in the upcoming turns, because playing the Snip Snap there, I'm clearly going for the aggressive game plan. And if I pick up an additional magnetizement there, and it would be pretty strong. But towards the end there, I might have actually done the wrong play because I didn't have too much time thinking about the discovers, because all of the discovers were pretty like I didn't think about any of them at all, right? Those weren't the ones I was looking for. But it could have been better to pick the 3-mana 2/1 and ping my own acolyte there instead of going the Snip Snap.
Okay.
I like realized that like 2 seconds afterwards, but I just didn't have time to think about it enough.
Think a little bit quicker. A little bit quicker.
Just this
Yeah,
Just a tiny bit.
I mean, I was just thinking about this Snip Snap all the time, and then towards the end I decided I wanted to Omega Assembly together with it, and the options just weren't normal, so I think I picked the wrong one.
Hey, you know what? I can't blame you for thinking about Snip Snap all the time. I do too. Hunter Ace, congratulations on your win here, and I look forward to seeing your matches later this week.
Hey, see you later, guys.
I know it's a dangerous game. We only have, a limited amount of time to get these interviews in. I was like, I have to ask him about one more play. I know this might put us 10 minutes behind schedule, but I've got to do it.
Yeah,
it was a really interesting turn. Right?
I just will never forget at Worlds where he walks in for the interview. We goes, tell us about your Shaman deck. And then 20 minutes later, we had a complete history of Shaman from start to finish in terms of design, not only in the philosophy of the flavor of the class and what its focus should be, but also just the cards that he landed on at the World Championship.
Yeah. It was quite something. There is a reason why Admirable has told that story 19 times during Hearthstone Grandmasters. It really was quite something.
It just was a lot.
Yeah.
It just was very interesting. So Hunter Ace able to pick up the win, moves up to a 7-4 match score now. Pavel still at the bottom with his. He's pretty much playing spoiler at this point, out of playoff contention.